doesn't necessarily mean that that's really what's going on. It's filtered.
Yeah, we all have little small sample sizes of our little industry. Yeah, Sue noted, don't forget to unmute mute yourself on the bottom left, or unmute when you speak. So if you hover over the microphone on the bottom left, you can mute and unmute yourself. And sometimes I'll try to monitor the videos. If you have a video, it's really nice because I'm not looking at a bunch of just names on the screen. If you have a video, I know it can be a little intimidating to have the videos, but it makes, for the speakers, it's a little bit more comfortable because you actually can see that there's people listening. So I always encourage to have the videos. But yeah, Jesse, I appreciate that. I'd like to have more of a perspective from everybody as to reality versus my small sample size. Between Red Rock and Keller Williams, we make up about 20% of the residential real estate market. So it's a big swath of the market if we were to just have our two brokerages have conversations, but there's still 80% out there that we don't know is going on. Between Carl Wright, thank you for being on as an appraiser, and Craig Morley, thank you for being on. I think I saw you in there somewhere. Oh, there you are. I got your video there. If we can have some of these industry leaders that are carrying a bulk of the market, that'll be great. We have Brett Burgess on from he's the president of Southern Utah Home Builders Association. So being able to see it from the construction angle, that'll be really healthy. So I'd like to jump right into it. Mayor Pike, I appreciate you spending some time this morning to chat with us. I have a couple of questions for you, but if you can start with what you're seeing at the city level. I read your article at St. George News about the health of the city itself and the economic health of the city government budget. What are you seeing as far as the economic outside of the city government? How are you seeing the health of the economy there?
Well, of course, right now, as we get updates daily from, various sides of the government and so forth, certainly from the perspective of the Division of Workforce Services, they have, jobless claims and, requests for assistance, unemployment and so forth. They're higher than what they were for the entire last year. So, of course, we expect that given this situation. We don't relish that at all, of course. But so I don't know the exact numbers, but it's huge. In terms of, revenues from the sales tax, which is, a measure, of course, of what's going on in the market. We won't really know that for a couple of months, at least 1 month, because those collections lag a little bit, and we get them from the state. But if I were guessing, I would guess the revenues as it relates to sales tax are going to be down at least 20%, maybe 30%. That's huge. We haven't seen those kinds of numbers since the Great Recession and even probably 9/11. The difference is with 9/11 back in 2001, of course, was that only lasted for a few days when it comes to some of the major entities like airlines, if you remember. And so we certainly hope that some of those big businesses like the airlines, we hope that they can get back going again. It's part of why there's assistance for airports and airlines because of how hard hit they are with this. And I don't have exact numbers, but what was supposed to happen at our airport was we were going from 26 flights a day, that's in and out of St. George, to 6. So let that sink in for a second. That's purely based on demand, and people aren't flying right now. Partially, of course, because in some states they're not supposed to. They can't unless their job is deemed essential. So that's sobering. Obviously, we are, especially small businesses are feeling the pain here locally, as well as larger businesses like SkyWest. Um, Another measure, you might have all heard, I hope you did hear, that there's a fund set up by the St. George City, Washington City, Santa Clara City, Washington County, the Chamber of Commerce, and several private companies, including Zions Bank, let's see, um, Mountain America Credit Union, State Bank of Southern Utah, Cache Valley Bank, and I think there's another private company or two. So it's a public-private partnership that so far has raised over $930,000 that will go to a loan with potential of some forgiveness, zero interest loan paid back over 5 years, not payments. Payments wouldn't start until after this emergency period is over, which is probably, just for definition points, probably, 60 to 90 days from now in terms of just definition. So it's a great opportunity for businesses with 50 or fewer employees who meet the criteria to be able to apply for up to $20,000 just to keep them going. So, we figured that if all were maxed out and we're asking for 20,000 and they were awarded 20,000, do the math, how many businesses we might be able to help. Well, this has only been, we offered this starting, I think about a week and a half ago. And we've already received, I think it's about 80 requests.
So you said it was a $900,000 fund, and if they all maxed out at 20,000, I think that's 45 businesses.
Right. So we were hoping to get to 50, get to $1 million, and I think we will. But yes, you're right on, Robert. And so, we've already received more than that. Some won't qualify. There's kind of a board that's been made up of the various entities, the chamber, as well as those other major entities that is helping to review. These are online, fully online applications. They're quick, easy, but there are some criteria. There are some attachments required, some documents. But people are amazing, doing amazing things, getting those to us. Good stories to tell. The idea is to try to bridge the gap before they are able to get federal or state funding to help them further. So these aren't large amounts, but it's a start.
Well, and I think this is an important fund from a local level, right? And I've said a bunch of times that we have a lot more power at the local level than I think us as local citizens give ourselves credit for. And we're a unique situation where Washington County, as much as it can be a joke sometimes, we are on an island. I mean, we're geographically set apart from so many different economic sources, and we're a linchpin as well. We're a connection to California. We're a connection to Salt Lake. And so that being said, we have a lot of control over some things that we could do at the local level to help mitigate the damage that is going to happen. And you said 20% loss of revenue, tax revenue over the next 12 months. Is that what you're looking at? Or is it over the next 3, or how are you stringing that out?
Well, I can tell you that what we're doing as a city is we've adjusted our budget for the rest of this fiscal year, which ours ends the end of June. We've adjusted it by about 15%, and we're adjusting our budget for the next fiscal year starting July 1 by about 20%.
Yeah, I was reading that in that article. I really appreciate that. Article was really really helpful just to kind of see what the city was doing. I'm curious as to the mix, and this is kind of the interesting part to us is from the housing industry is us economically, we're independent of, my business as real estate agent is dependent on the health of the economy, but it's not limited to that, right? So if I have a lot of high paying jobs, I might be selling a lot of high paying or high value homes, where if we have a lot of low paying jobs, I still have a business. I just sell lower priced homes, right? So from a housing perspective, this is different from '07 in that it's not the fundamentals of the housing industry that's a problem. It's a greater economic, it's a greater economic adjustment to the entire spectrum. So what would you say are a mix in St. George? What's our mix of economic entities, right? Do we get a majority of our economic stimulus from tourism, construction? Is it service industry? What do you see it as, or what do you guys rate it as?
I'm not sure that I could put it into a mix like that, Robert. What I would tell you is that it's certainly highly based on the combination of retail and tourism, like to the tune of 60% of our total budget. And so when you consider what that means, right now, as you can imagine, Costco and the other big box stores, we're not seeing those sales tax revenues down. We won't. I shouldn't say we're not seeing, we haven't seen them yet, but we won't. They're all very busy. But what about car sales? That already has dropped off, I'm sure. And so anyway, 60% of the city's revenue coming from sales tax, that's pretty big. It's sales tax, though, for us is much more, always has been much more volatile, but very important because it helps us do some of the things that we otherwise might not be able to do, which is why tourism can be helpful to us. So, as it relates to, other things, I think you're exactly right. You'll see some other services. I mean, healthcare right now, it's very different. But in fact, it's going to be down a bit too, believe it or not. Because
non-essential healthcare, right? We have a lot of non-essential healthcare in Washington County. From what I understand, that's been taking a major hit.
Major hit because they've been trying to keep statewide. They've been trying to keep hospital beds open and available for sicker people, and they've been trying to keep people as healthy and therefore not in the hospital, potentially spreading germs that they don't even know they have. So yeah, right now, if you were to say the hospital has about 300 beds, they have about 100, at least 100 available every day. And for this time of year, not normal. Normally they would have, very few beds available during, flu season. So anyway, all that will affect us. And again, the hospital is a not-for-profit, but think of all the doctors, all the other caregivers, some of whom are, especially the physicians, they're volume-based, just like you, so they're if they're not operating, then they're not making money. So it is going to affect a lot of people. We just, it's hard to know exactly how much and for how long, but that's why, it is important. And I think this has been the tact of the goal of the governor and his staff have been to try to do this as carefully and as quickly as possible to try to flatten the curve. You keep hearing that. And so however and why ever it's worked, we seem to so far have been spared a major hit down here. And even in Utah, we've been spared a major hit so far. And so don't know what to credit. We'll never know precisely why. But I think it was a good plan, and the governor resisted shutting the whole place down, which is probably good. At least it seems to be working out for us. So the next couple weeks are critical, as I'm sure you've heard. And, there's nothing magic about it, but the estimate is April 25th should be the peak. Some say we might be peaking even a little sooner. I don't know what that means for Washington County. It might mean we peak a week later. It might mean we peak a week earlier with our weather and stuff. This virus doesn't do well on surfaces when it's warmer. And so that makes it less likely to be transferred and spread. So I like our chances right now. I'm encouraged. And I think that hopefully, even though I don't see that it's going to just become all of a sudden the floodgates open May 1st, I think that'll be kind of a key time. If things go well between now and the end of April, I think we will see a lot of things be able to come back. And I think, as you said, Robert, you hinted at this, fundamentals. I think the fundamentals are there for us. They were there before. I think we'll be back, and we'll be back in a big way in Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I really appreciate your time. I have about 70 other questions, but I want to leave it open. I don't see any in the chat box, but does anybody have any questions for the mayor? Vardell says April 25th is his birthday, and he
Well, then that's the day.
he says that must be the day.
Well, I just, Robert, I appreciate what everybody's doing, and you know, again, we're going to get this. I think we already are well on our way. I appreciate the collaboration and the positive attitude, which you are the type of people that have. And so, anyway, thanks for the you know the whole cooperation, collaboration, positive attitude that you all bring.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you having on, and I say this all the time that real estate agents in our community, we're the community connectors, right? We're the ones that know all the people, and if we could rally together a little bit right now and connect all the pieces where we need to connect them, I think we're all going to be okay. Chantel asked the question: if the numbers are lower than northern Utah, is there a reason why we should stay at home for as long as northern Utah?
The only reason would be if we're lagging behind them in terms of kind of the curve, and so that's the concern. But I think that that's why the next, days and the next few days and the next 2 weeks are what really matter a lot. If it continues to go the way it is now, I think we could probably assume we've seen our peak. Meaning in the next week or so. I don't think we have peaked yet, but that's hard to know. And part of the reason it's hard to know is because we have smaller numbers. And people tend to not get tested as much over the weekend. So it's kind of like whenever your kids or grandkids have something over the weekend, you say, well, we'll wait and call the doctor's office on Monday. So we tend to lag on over the weekend in knowing numbers and how many new cases we have. The good news is we have the capacity now to test more people than are being tested. We're able to test statewide 5,000 people. I think it's now 5,000 people a day, and we're not testing nearly that many. In Washington County, by the way, as of this week, a couple days ago, we have the ability to not only collect the swab, the very uncomfortable swab up your nose you've probably heard about. We don't just collect it and send it up north to be tested, to be processed. We do it here, the entire thing. Before that was being done centrally, then it was being done at several places up in Salt Lake. Now we're doing it here as well, and that is meaning we can have results in 12 hours instead of 3 or 4 days. So that's good because that's data. That's quick data. And so I would think that, really in the next week, we're going to know more. And even in the next few days, we're going to know more. So if that's the case, to the questions point, we will, we'll make some different decisions. We probably won't go against the governor's directive. I think it's always best to stay with the governor's directive, but they're looking at the same data. So as we were working with them before, and for example, asking them to close Zion National Park was a tough thing. But we did it to send a message to mostly those out of Utah and from northern Utah that this isn't the time to come to St. George while we all figure this out. We'll undo that just as quickly and lobby to undo that as soon as we're convinced that we're safe and they're safe.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mayor Pike. I know there's a lot of other questions that we could have for you, but I know Matt Curtis, I got him next up on the agenda. If you would like to stick around and listen in, and if you want to be invited back anytime to at least listen in and participate at whatever level, we'd love to have you. And Danielle Larkin, I know you're here from the city council as well. Feel free to jump in. And
thanks, Robert. And so is Greg MacArthur, I saw. So
okay, awesome. Great. Thanks for being on, Greg. Matt, I want to transition to you. I know it's a kind of an abrupt transition, but I want to try to stay on task here. Matt, can you let me see if you pop in here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Okay, wanted to talk a little bit about vacation rentals. For our small group in Southern Utah, we have since the beginning part of March, we have lost over 500 reservations, which is about 500, $500,000 in bookings.
Real quick, Matt, how many nightly, weekly rentals do you manage at Red Rock?
This data is for about 150 homes.
Okay, got it.
So, and if we wanted to compare it from this year to last year, we're down about 80%. So I don't want to get everyone alarmed, but it's a very significant number. It's very scary.
And how much time is that taking? Because I think 2 weeks ago we looked at it and everybody was booking their nightly, weekly rent. They were booking nightly, weekly rentals. I know my sister up in Salt Lake, even though I told her to stay there, she was trying to get a booking down here. She's like, I can't find anything. Everything's booked. I said, well, that seems like you should stay there then, huh? She didn't like that. But are you seeing that just happened like a week ago or 2 weeks? How long ago did this kind of start to happen?
Our team has been taking cancellations for weeks.
Yeah.
And the majority of our bookings now or in the last couple of weeks were just to extend, to stay quarantined and to stay safe. But our bookings are basically have dropped to nothing.
Wow. What else are you seeing, at least from the regular rental market? I don't know if Candace Cather's on or Holly Balk is on from KW here, but are you seeing from the regular rental market? I saw a statistic that 30% is almost a third of Americans didn't pay their mortgage last month, or this month. I don't know if that number, how they could even gauge that number, being that it's only April 10th, that's an accurate number. But what are you seeing from the rental market as renters, tenants paying their rents?
Now, we did notice we only had a 3% last month in April that haven't paid, which is actually amazing. We're not sure what May is going to look like. We're sure it's going to go up a little bit, but the 3% just recently out of our 500 plus rentals was a good sign.
And did you do any kind of buffer for those? Being that it's only April 10th, you kind of normally get a 5-day slush factor. Are there still some out there that are, hey, we'll give you a little buffer zone to come up with money or something like that?
Yeah, we talked with everyone that hadn't paid or that's late and trying to work out a plan and a process for all of them.
Yeah, nice. I appreciate that. Who else on? Go ahead.
Yeah, so going back to, I want to make the case for why vacation rentals in Southern Utah can hold tight and actually make it through this. A lot of the investors that bought in the last couple of years that treated a vacation rental like an investment, they have recently all just about sold their homes and realized that this isn't the best investment. So why that's a good case for all of us is most of these vacation rental homes are being used as a second home, meaning that the buyer is more interested in using it for themselves, family, and friends rather than trying to make a pure investment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I've seen that. We've ran some absorption numbers on nightly, weekly rentals and what the supply and demand is. Where are you seeing, not to challenge the thought, but because I think you're right. How are you seeing that they've adjusted from that purely investment property to more of a second home? Because I think I've talked to Dusty Wright at my office, Jeremy Larkin. I've talked to a bunch of people, and I think we all feel that that's actually true as well. How are you running that data as far as statistic, just so we can kind of see if there's a way that we can look at that?
Well, I don't have the best data on that. I think it's just more our group of owners who are realizing that this isn't a pure investment, and they'll make a little bit of money on the side. But what we've noticed, to adding to this point, is most of these buyers are well capitalized. A lot of them are putting substantial amount of money down, and a lot of them are paying cash. So they're going to be okay to weather the storm, whether it's another couple months or whether it's, when the tourism gets back, they're comfortable to weather this storm. My other main point for Southern Utah is the St. George is we're a drive-to destination rather than a fly-to destination. And what that means is we're going to get back all the Wasatch Front when it's safe. We're going to get all of those vacation travelers back first before, let's say, a place they have to fly to Florida, Hawaii, Mexico. They're going to take probably more trips here because it's a short couple hour drive, which is also going to give us a big boost for when we can lift this, lift this band.
Yeah, that's actually a brilliant. I love that. We are a drive-through destination. I hadn't heard that before, and I think that's a really valid point. I appreciate you making that point because I think that's a valid way of looking at our tourism. I'm concerned, obviously, about the ancillary businesses that have fallout from the fact that we're not getting any tourists this long. I would agree. Is there any lenders on that have seen, as far as the nightly, weekly rental investment properties, if they're categorizing them more as investment properties versus a second home? Because I know there's two different types of loan programs. Can any lenders speak on that?
Well, and going back, Robert, to the vacation rental, we're seeing good occupancy. The problem is that we all know there's a saturation in vacation rentals. So obviously rates have gone down, but our occupancy is, staying pretty, we still got some traction there.
Yeah.
And the other thing people have to realize is, although vacation rentals are suffering a crazy amount right now, we're becoming the new norm of travel. A lot of people are just starting to pick up and understand that vacation rentals make a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons, whether it's, a full kitchen, washer, dryer.
Yeah. I have seen that the values have started to plateau out. And I think that has to do with that investment money going away and they're starting to balance out. How do we look at that from a future construction and development perspective? Do you feel like, if I'm a real estate agent advising on somebody wanting to go build nightly weeklies, or if I'm going to the city council saying, hey, I want to get permitted for nightly weekly rentals, what are your thoughts around how can we make these more of second home type things than encouraging the nightly weekly market? Or do we do nothing? Do we just say, hey,
I think the builders are realizing that we're oversaturated, and I think just simple supply and demand is going to turn a lot of those vacation rentals to maybe long-term. A lot of the traditional 3-bed, 2-bath are going from a vacation rental type to more of a long-term or more of a 90-day stay. A lot of people want to come down and enjoy the fall and the spring here from the Wasatch Front. So I think it's just going to happen. But I think there's a lot of good things that the vacation rental industry has. And I think a little slowdown as far as building will, kind of stabilize things here.
Yeah, Brett, I'd love to hear your perspective on that and what you've heard from being at Suba and being able to have conversations with these builders. I think I have you're muted right now if you want to chime in, but I'd love to hear what conversations are being had there. And I'd love to hear more from you in transition, unless Matt, do you have something else you want to cover?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Brett, what do you think? Oh, you're still muted. Let me see if I got Katie. Do you want to unmute him?
Hello?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, first off, thanks for having me here. We really appreciate it. Do you want me to speak specifically about kind of where the nightly rental market's been as far as construction, what I've seen, or just kind of everything in general?
Well, just as a transition, if you want to talk about that and go into general, that'd be awesome as well.
Yeah, we're seeing very much what you just talked about. I mean, talking to Matt, we build a lot with or sell a lot of product to Cole West. I've talked to Dave and Colin over there quite a bit, and it's very much true. They've seen a lot of the transition from the speculative buyers to the second home buyers, which I think is healthy. It's people that really want that second home that just want to supplement their income. So I think it's a healthy market. It's just interesting. We have a handful of hotels in this market. And it's interesting because our numbers very much reflect what Matt's talking about. I get our number update daily, and we're at about 15% occupancy, and have been since this started in southern Utah. Our northern Utah and kind of southern Idaho stuff's actually kind of been in the 25 to 30% occupancy, which is interesting, just as an observation. But it's interesting as the nightly rentals came into the market, what it kind of did to our hospitality. Obviously, there was just more product. I mean, people could finally come down here and find a place to stay. Our occupancy was insane. You know, we were at 90% occupancy for, you know, a couple of years because there just was no product. Nightly rentals filled that void and brought us down to a more normal occupancy level. So I think the nightly rentals was a healthy thing. I think instead of, you know, a hotel selling 3 rooms to 3 different families, they can all come down and get a nightly rental, 3-bedroom unit, all kind of congregate together with the kitchen that Matt talked about. So I think it's a great thing for our market. But we have seen, you know, a little bit of a drop off and slowdown. We haven't seen it completely fall out. You know, it's still a good product, but I definitely think it's going to be, it's going to be come down to location, I think, and things of that nature. I don't want to get too much into that. You know, I know we're here to talk about kind of what's happened to the market and what we're doing. You know, I guess I really want to say, going back to the beginning, which I say the beginning, it's been a month, you know, so we have to kind of keep that into perspective. It hasn't been very long.
Right.
But it's been amazing, I have to say, to see our leaders, you know, Mayor Pike, all the council members that are on, all the various mayors and city officials who've worked extremely hard to keep our industry running. You know, it's amazing if we don't work together to see how quick something can stop. As soon as you know, a lot of the info came out and a lot of unknowns were out there, we started to get builders calling in wondering, what about inspections? You know, if we can't have inspections, our community or our industry dries up, you know, with that one thing delaying us. It hasn't been as seamless in certain municipalities, but everyone is working together to work through it. The thing that's been nice, and I have to hand it to you know, John Willis, Mayor Pike, and St. George City. They already last year started implementing this online city inspection program. That was huge for us. We were actually planning on having a training meeting the 1st of March, right after we got done with the parade. And then all this kind of happened. You know, we were getting back into things. So we actually just had it yesterday on Zoom, and it's been invaluable. You know, we're able to submit plans, to really keep ourselves working. And the thing that's actually been nice on the construction and even the development front, as far as building, we already kind of are a socially distant, you know, industry as far as construction. You know, sometimes you get cabinet guys and countertop guys and stuff that are right on top of each other. But, you know, our excavation company, for instance, every one of our guys, you know, is in their own piece of equipment. We made sure of it. Like right now, they're not even changing equipment, like this guy jumping in that loader. We're definitely making sure everyone stays in their own piece of equipment, you know, and doing the things that we have to do. So, you know, a lot of little tweaks as far as construction goes. The governor's office has been amazing. You know, we have great representation in our building community at the House level, at the state level. You know, the Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson with Destination Homes, Paul Ray with Northern Utah Home Builders Association, Clark Ivory. They put together the Construction Economic Task Force to try and make sure we're following the governor's guidelines and implementing best practices for ourselves.
So, and this is a good question from David Alderman. Thanks for being on, David. From the construction aspect, what do you think as far as demand goes, right? Because I know you guys are taking a lot of actions in making sure that you keep your system going, but what can we look forward to? What do you look for as far as a leading indicator to where demand is headed? Are you seeing investors, developers push pause on some things? How long could you see that could last? What are you seeing right now as far as where that demand is?
You know, it's a great question. And luckily with our SUBA meetings, I've had the opportunity. I have to say, I'm appreciative just with timing that we finished the parade and then this happened. So we were able to have our parade. I want to say with that, a lot of our builders through the parade, you know, we have obviously a bunch of different tiers. We have very, very high end. We have kind of mid-grade, and then we have production builders. So we have a good sense of the overall community. A lot of the high-end home builders sold most of their homes through the parade, you know, and so they kind of sold that. There's a few of them that are still on the market and kind of trying to sell those. we also, it's interesting because right when this was starting to hit the market, we personally had a subdivision. It was 20 lots in the heart of Little Valley that we went out and priced. And then that weekend we started getting all the news from, the feds, and we're like glued to the TV like everyone else. And, you could just feel the economy change. Well, we kind of held back a week or two to kind of figure out pricing. Is it insensitive to get these lots on the market? And we started to have a lot of people calling us saying, when are you going to price these? We want to get in, while interest rates are still low. And then we had a few of them that would fall out. So it's kind of a good mix. I've also talked to a lot of our production builders, and to just kind of, I'm giving a short answer long, I'm giving you a lot of information. So hopefully this helps answer the question.
No, yeah, go ahead.
But so we have in that 21 lots, I believe we still have 9. And I think there were supposed to be 4 of them closed today. We have a few more in the next couple of weeks. So half of the subdivision is still moving forward.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to see. I have a deal that we're going to close with a production builder. We're going to do 47 lots next Wednesday. And then actually yesterday, I just got off the phone with another production builder who put 37 under contract, and we're going to close in about 2 to 3 weeks. And this is yesterday.
Yeah.
So a lot of those guys, the one difference though, in those kind of takedowns, we call them with the production guys, we're definitely ratcheting the phasing back. So within that 40 lots, we might do 10 lot phases. So they understand that we need to keep people working. We need to they all need to have agents, sitting in these model homes and phases. Luckily, I think that our industry locally learned a lot from the last downturn. We still haven't got a lot of inventory out ahead of us. Last time
we've dropped inventory. We've dropped about 8% inventory March 2019 to March 2020. So we've gone the wrong direction of what we would normally expect to see as far as inventory. And that's why I really wanted to have you on, is to say, we need people, we need the builders to continue building. And are you seeing those developers and those builders say, no, we're going to keep moving forward. We might adjust the price points to stimulate the interest in it. Are you seeing anything from that angle, like changes to strategies or types of builds that they're doing? I mean, I know it's early, but just early talk of these kinds of things.
I think a lot of that, yes. There is a lot of talk of again, kind of phasing, not getting too far out ahead of ourselves. Like I said, luckily, most people were building there wasn't as much speculation. A lot of people were getting build jobs, or as they were speculating, even the last couple of years, they were speculating with 1 or 2 homes instead of 10, So I feel like everyone that I know is well positioned. A lot of the people are talking about just their hottest sellers, and building into those more. Obviously they've done a lot of different things. Luckily, a lot of the builders I talk to, production or whatnot, a lot of their stuff's online, and most of the people that come in to talk to them about a new home kind of already know their house model they want, a couple of the options they want. So a lot of the stuff that took a lot of face-to-face stuff is now done online. I talked to a builder last week, and they said there's still a lot of people that want to do face-to-face, and they're definitely setting up their offices differently and keeping distant. But, so they still will do a few of those things, but most of the stuff's online. Zoom's been invaluable for that. But yeah, I want to say, to kind of get back to the root of the question, from what I understood and all the builders I talked to, I would say maybe 20% of the buyers that were in their kind of contract pool that they had online that were ready to go, there was maybe, 20% of them kind of fell off, and they're like, we don't want to do anything, we're done. And then there was a few of those that were on the fence, and they're like, let me wait a month or 2 and see what happens. There was maybe, I'd say 10% from what I gather. And then there were also a couple of weeks later, probably, I'm going to say now 15% that jumped back in, and they're like, hey, we want to do this, this, and this. And they put 4 more units under contract. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of social dynamic, people that are scared, people that see opportunity.
Still a
But
lot
the
of
good
uncertainty, it sounds like. Just still a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, and to make one quick other point, the thing that is a little bit difficult to get a great indicator. Obviously, I have to look to Matt and you guys, Robert at Keller, to tell us traffic. I mean, every time I see a builder, my first question to them, how's your traffic? You know, what are you seeing? Because that's going to be the first thing that tell us when sales are done and what really starts to make us react. So traffic is huge. Everyone still says traffic's about 60% of what it was. That was as of last week. The other thing that hasn't really affected us just yet is I think any home builder in our market and even land developer, we're kind of on a 6 to 7 month cycle. By the time you get your permits in, your house built, your everything done, or if you're a developer and you're getting zone changes, general plan amendments, construction drawing reviews built, you're 6 to 7 months at best,
Yeah,
so
good point.
it's a little bit hard to see, to change, you know what I mean? I'm still,
Right.
I actually have a item on in Hurricane that it was going on March 19th. It was a general plan amendment that was a public hearing item. And the 2 days before, all public hearings got shut down. And I'm still waiting on Hurricane to get back online, trying to get set up with Zoom. Public hearings are definitely something that are interesting. And I know St. George, I have an item on with St. George City Planning Commission on Tuesday. I think it's going to be one of their first Zoom meetings with a public hearing. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm glad.
Yeah. Hey, let us know how we can get that out to everybody. I think it'd be cool to see how big of a turnout we could get to those public hearings on these virtual. Some engagement from the city at this level might be interesting to see. So let us know how we can get that out.
Mayor Pike could be able to answer that, and John Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, in the regular public notice, it will have the link to the Zoom call. And we had several public hearings at City Council a week ago, and actually it worked out pretty well. I think we've got a pretty good system down, not unlike what you're doing today.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, Brett, I had one more question for you, and I don't see very many other chat questions. So please, if you have some questions, throw them in the chat box, or you could raise your hand and I can have you ask the question yourself. But I'm interested in material costs and how you feel land costs are, and do you look at leading indicators, right? Because you nailed it with our industry is slow, and all of a sudden. On the last call, I kind of talked about how buyer demand and perception are the main sources of how our prices go, and it happens slowly and then quickly. So 6 months from now, we look back and say, hey, our traffic was down 30%. Yeah, we closed 37 lots, but that was down 30% even at that time, and we haven't seen some increases. All of a sudden, 6 months from now, we look back and said, whoa, there were some things we should have done 6 months ago. Do you see material costs changing in this moment that might keep people from building? And I know you said phasing some things out might be a benefit, but could that be looking back saying, well, I think I probably should have tried to get these things rolling back then versus trying to anticipate where demand's going to be? Maybe I do need to keep the inventory up to keep things rolling.
Yeah, I think that, material costs, some of the big ones are just so hard to nail down. The most difficult one, there's always concrete and lumber. Those two things are just so national. Concrete, I can't even remember the last time it went down. It's almost every 6 months. It's a $8 a ton increase or yard, whatever. They, with the I hate to say monopoly that a lot of the people that own the fly ash pits and
no, you can do that. That's a monopoly. I agree with you, man.
So concrete's definitely an interesting one. Obviously, one big one for us when we're paving is oil. Oil is such a big product that goes into asphalt, so when oil comes down, I'm talking lots right now, when oil comes down, and oil again with pipe, a lot of times pipe prices are just so up and down. So we actually watch oil for supply or for construction costs more than anything. So with when oil's down, I couldn't tell you offhand right now. I'd have to almost get with my dad. That's kind of more his business than the excavation company. I used to watch it a lot more than I do. So pipe and asphalt, those types of things in the development world will come down. The crazy thing about Southern Utah, and all of you guys know it, and one of the things now that's almost more interesting than ever with land prices and lot prices, when I bought my first lot for my folks back in 2001, it was $30,000, and that was improvements, land cost, everything. That was my lot, and it was a 10,000 square foot lot. So things have changed a lot. A lot of that is obviously land price, what the landholders are selling for and what they ever bought for in the beginning. And right now, from what I've seen in land pricing, most people that have weathered the storm of the last downturn didn't need to sell, so they can still sit. So personally, I would find it hard to believe, and there's a few maybe that have speculated and paid way more than they should have and stuff, may go back to bank. Never really seen a lot of that. So as far as lot costs, with land and just improvement costs of what they are now, I don't see a huge price savings in lot cost. Now, when you come to housing, it's obviously a different story. Drywall is another huge one. And that stuff, it's kind of similar. Lumber is another thing that kind of blows with the wind and really follows the market. So if you wanted to save on a few items like lumber and possibly drywall, things like that, labor is going to definitely be one. And that's, if you're framing material, you're framing labor, those types of things, I think it's going to have to get 6 or 8 months down the road for some of that stuff to come back. But you almost need to look at each individual
sector
product, and see, carpet, even in the downturn, I can't even remember if carpet came down. So you almost need to get your cost breakdown, and almost do a speculation on what you think will come down and if it's worth it to you or not. So
well, and also because my concern is what's going to go up, because I see, you
Right.
talked about oil, is that OPEC just agreed to reduce production by 10%, which oil has been going down. At least the stock value has been going down quite a bit over the last month, and they just finally came to an agreement after some pressure to restrict, right, the supply of that oil and production. So my concern would be the opposite effect, right? Not waiting for values to go down, but see what spikes, coupling with the economic impact. And that's what I would love to see, some paying attention to, and seeing, if construction costs go up, building permits, and based on the city budget, I'm excited to see how that goes in the county on how much permitting costs are, what some incentives are for builders to keep building, maybe for a short period of time. I'd like to see if some of those things are happening. And I want to get to some of these questions because I know we're at 9:53, and I try to stay on time as much as we can. Brett, I really appreciate you jumping in, and hopefully you can come into the future ones that we have. George Prado asked about the appraisal flow. I know we got Craig Morley and Carl right on. How is the appraisal flow looking? I know this is a lagging indicator of what's going on, right? The appraisals show up after buyer demand has already been decided on, but are you seeing appraisal flows already dropping, and how are the refinance appraisals doing versus just 3 weeks ago?
Well, I'll start and let Carl finish up.
Thanks, Craig.
The biggest challenge that we've had is getting access into some of the owner-occupied homes. There's nationally, and I'm the president of the National Association of Appraisers, and so nationally we've seen some states where appraisers are not considered to be an essential service provider, and they haven't been able to go into homes.
That's insane to me. Why would that?
Well, and I think the fear is, and we've actually had a couple of appraisers die around the country from COVID-19. Don't know where they got it. Probably not appraising, but it's obviously a concern. And so the other concern is that you're bringing some person into their home. They're uncertain as to their health. And so we've had to institute some quality control kinds of procedures so that when we set up an appointment to go look at an occupied property, is anyone in your home traveled outside the country in the last 2 weeks? is anyone manifesting any illnesses? And if they are, then we're contacting the lender and just notifying them that we may need to have to put this one on hold, or we may need to see if you want to convert it to a drive-by or some other way of collecting the property information.
Yeah, and depending on the loan type, right? Because I know some of the loan types, FHA loans, Utah Housing, I think, has been put on hold. So they might not be willing to do that if they can't get an accurate appraisal, depending on the quality of the loan.
Yeah, and it's a moving target. Within the last week, FHA, well, yesterday FHA came out with some new guidelines. They're temporary guidelines. Fannie Mae has come out with some revised guidelines that will last through the middle of May. Basically, what they're saying is, and we've got this dilemma, because prior to COVID-19, the risk associated with loans was pretty low. Employment was good, the economy was good, and within the process of a couple of weeks, we've gone to a vibrant, healthy economy to unemployment that's projected to exceed that of the Great Depression. And we have no idea what that's going to do. So your secondary lending markets are very concerned about what's the prospect of repayment on these things if we have a blip in the economy where it takes a while for people to get back on their feet. So the value of the collateral is now a huge issue.
Yeah. Are you seeing the number of appraisals, though, that you're getting from lenders? Has it decreased? I think, Carl, you had told me that yours had. Craig, are you seeing the same thing?
Not that much.
Okay. And refis versus regular home purchase appraisals, where do you say that is, that mix?
Home purchases have gone down a little bit, but not a huge amount. Refis, the problem with refis is rates have bounced back up again as a result of some of the uncertainty in the market. So it's kind of put the brakes on some of that, where you saw some of these rates that had dropped down into the low to mid threes. It's back. It's been bouncing around a little bit, and so I think it has put the brakes on some of the refis, and I think that may be why we've seen some appraisal offices see a little bit of a decline.
That's funny to me. Low to mid threes, and they've stopped refinancing. That's insane to me.
Yeah,
Carl, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the same things that Craig is seeing. The interest rates were pretty low about a month ago, so we're just seeing the end of the refi boom finish up this week. My numbers are going down next week. I don't have nearly as many appraisals scheduled for next week as I did this week. So I think our business is certainly tied to how interest rates are, and if interest rates are low, then we're busy and whatnot. But it's still too early to tell what the lead indicators are for our market and what things, how this is really going to affect things. We're really only into this 3 weeks. So I really appreciate that you have organized, you've organized this group so that we can be on top of it. I feel like when things fell in 2008, this discussion wasn't happening until the second quarter of 2008, when we were already into it and we couldn't do anything about it. So, Robert, thanks to you for organizing this and getting some of the lead people in town to talk and be able to have a communication.
Yeah, and I know we got 2 minutes till 10, and a lot of people have other things to jump on, and I want to keep my promise of keeping it as close to an hour as we can. Carl, I appreciate you having on, and Craig and Carl, if you could potentially the next time we meet, I ran some numbers. We have a Broker Metrics as a program here, and the way I'm tracking a leading indicator right now from residential real estate, and I know Tammy Richardson, I was going to have you on, and we ran a little out of time, but if we could have you on next time as well. I'm tracking pendings, right? How many homes have we gone under contract? And looking at March 19 versus March 20, we're down 13.1% in putting homes under contract, right? So if I'm going to say, if March was this way, I'm going to assume that April, we're not going to see that under contracts go up. Hopefully we see it stabilize. And if it's down only 13% next month, that's okay. And if it's down only 13% in the next month, that's okay. We just don't want it to see it to start to drop off. And that pending number to me is really a leading indicator, because as the pending stop, then that's 30 to 60 days from now when those closings are going to stop, because closings are fine, right? We haven't seen a lot of that change. Would you run some absorption numbers, Craig and Carl, maybe just for certain little sectors, and see if you could come to some just stable number of where we're at right now, and then we could kind of track that over time? Would you guys be willing to do that?
Absolutely. In fact, I've done a little bit of that already. And I think one of the other things we're looking at in terms of value is the listing inventory compared to sales.
Yeah.
If we start seeing a large inventory of listings relative to the number of homes that are selling, it's going to put downward pressure on housing.
Yeah, we had an 8% drop month to month, 19 to 20 in listings. So active for sales are down 9%. So, as supply goes down, if demand goes down as well equally, that's okay, right? We're not going to see a whole lot of changes. However, when supply starts to creep up and listing inventory stays on the market longer and demand dries up, that's when we're going to start to see this arc of things go a different direction. So I appreciate you doing that. And Tammy, I would love to have you back on and talk your perspectives on residential. If you guys want to stick around, I don't want to hold anybody hostage. If you want to stick around and chat a little bit more, I'd love to talk, and I can kind of leave it open to everybody. We have some comments in the side, just some questions and things like that. So if you want to stick around, I'm okay with that. I'll stay on for as long as you guys need. Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll keep doing these. I'll keep doing them week by week until we feel like we probably don't need it every week.
So, and if you would like, I can aggregate some of the data that we put and send it to you, and then you can distribute it to anybody that you'd like, just in terms of some of the trending that we've looked at. Yeah,
if you want to share with me, I'll have a registration list, thanks to Zoom, of everybody who's on this call, and I can send it out, and then they can send it out to everybody. I'm going to put a limit of about 100 people on these. I don't want to go to the webinar route, because I want to try to encourage. I think the more we do some of these, the more people will be willing to jump in and have conversations, being able to raise their hand and speak what they want to say. I'd love to have some more engagement. I definitely don't want to be the only one asking the questions. So if we could push that too. So if you want to get it to me, Craig, and I'll make sure it goes out to everybody on the registration list, get them that information. I'd appreciate that.
I'll have it to you later today or in the morning.
Thank you, sir. Carl, thanks for your help, man. You got to get, it looks like you got to get going.
Yeah, I got it. I got a couple appointments I got to go to. So thanks, Robert, again for having us on.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Bye.
Bye. Brett and Lori, thanks for being on. I know we didn't get to hear from you, but we'd love to hear from you anytime that you feel like there's something you're seeing. Will supply go up when people aren't scared about having people in their homes? I don't know. It's a good question. I'm under the perspective, David, that was a question from David Alderman saying, do you think supply will go up when people aren't scared of having other people in their homes? I think there's a big ability for us to just adapt, right? I know there's some limitations around masks and availability for hand sanitizers and some of these supply issues. I think once we get that, because it's a wave of, we have to produce more. Silver Reef, I don't know if you saw, Silver Reef Brewing Company is producing their own hand sanitizer, and I think their production just went live yesterday. So some of these like supply issues might encourage us to we could practice some of this social distancing. Daryl Nakai on Bob Richards' team, I mean, he's been out just being super safe, right? And giving people gloves and having masks for them. And he was able to order masks, I think it was 3-4 weeks ago, just being forward thinking and saying, let me see if I could get some basic masks. And he's still showing homes, right? We just adapting our business, just like the restaurants are. If we can't forecast when the government's going to say, hey, everybody should go out, we could do some limited interaction, social distancing, following safe practices, and still keep the ball going, right? If we can get sellers to see that there's a safe way of doing this, I think we could keep the momentum going. People need to sell their houses. They need to buy homes. That kind of thing doesn't really change. The number of them change, but I mean, unfortunately, people still pass away. Unfortunately, people do have to make remargin their expenses. And if a second home doesn't financially make sense for them anymore, they got to sell it, right? And so if they got to sell it, we have to figure out some ways to attract buyers to be able to sell those properties. So I'd love to open this conversation up for at least realtors, because a lot of who's left is realtors. about how we can keep that ball rolling, about how can we practice safe but not stop and not get off the phone and not feel like there's no reason why we can't all get back to work at a certain level. I'm okay with silence too. I can stay here in silence.
For me, I'm going to speak up. I think that it's about us being confident and secure, because I think that that really follows suit for our clients. So I've been out showing a lot of homes, and when I call to set up an appointment and I'm asking the agent, especially if the home is occupied, if their clients have any signs of being sick or fever or anything, they're always like shocked that I'm asking those questions. So I think that we all need to get into a new routine of protecting everyone, the people that are living in the home, our clients. And if my clients know that I'm doing everything I can to protect them going into a home that's occupied, or setting up a vacant home for them to see and me waiting outside, it gives them confidence to continue looking at homes. If I am saying, oh, I'm really nervous and I don't feel comfortable going in those homes and maybe we should put this off, they're going to follow suit.
Yeah, I think one of the great conversations with our buyers is we have the conversation, you know, I know you want to go see these 10 homes today. If we were to go write an offer on one home today, which home would that be? Let's go see that one first, because potentially getting into 10 homes isn't going to be as likely these days as it was before. There's some of these advantages we could use as realtors to say, hey, let's not tromp through all these homes if we don't need to. I know you're curious, but if we were to boil these down to 3 homes, and you were to write an offer on 3 of these homes, which 3 are those? And let's go look at only those, right? And we can give them confidence that, hey, you're right, I don't need to go browse through all these homes. There's some other ways that we can do that. What else are you hearing other agents doing to keep their business going? Because we're still seeing listings hit the market. We're still seeing homes close. It's gone down, but it hasn't, the bottom hasn't fallen out, right? A 13% decrease in under contracts isn't a huge number. It's remarkable since haven't seen that in a long time, but it is something that I think is not anything that we need to really look at as this huge decrease in under contracts.
No, I would probably jump in and say, Robert, that I think traffic's slow. I think one of the things that we are trying to do as far as safety mechanisms is a lot of what Julia said. I'm kind of surprised at the number of realtors that act like it's just no big deal to set up showings and not really give us that information. And when we ask, they're a little bit like, you know, you're asking too many questions, which is a little bizarre to me.
Right.
Traffic's slow. I'm kind of surprised what I think Brett or the mayor, I can't remember who it was, said that they'd heard that it was only down 60%. Like you said earlier, deals are sticking together, but traffic, man, it is really slow right now. I feel in my projects. Even drive-through, spoke with 2 or 3 builders yesterday that felt the same way. We're just not even seeing anyone really out. I think there's pent up stuff though. I'm getting more phone calls than I typically get because they want to know information about, you know, the project for future. We're going to see the gates open in another 3 weeks and it's going to be crazy. Yeah,
Brett, it was Matt who was talking about that equity piece that we have, is that we're as an economy, the ones of us that the people that have the money, right? Those of us that have businesses, that have investment properties, we're equity rich, where, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we weren't equity rich. We were over leveraged on banks and getting these loans to try to make us money, right? We were using that leverage to make us money, where now we're equity rich and having our money, our real money making us money, right? That's a true investor. It's not leveraged money from a bank or a false value of property leveraging more projects and banks. It's actual money making money. And I think that's fundamentally, that's the massive difference between now and then, right?
You're right. Going back to what Sue was just saying, I agree. We're gonna see a huge boom in tourism into our community once this ban is lifted, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah. Well, and I want to see that. I know there's a lot of these concerns about there's fear out there of saying like, well, there could be a second wave and the virus could cause this. I think it's really important. Rooters tend to get flying around a lot in small town. It's great to get on the same page. Lori, thank you for putting that in the chat box. You actually just sent it to me, but I appreciate you being on. I think that fear piece of it is, I think we should transition that to not just fear, but like, how do we adapt to this, right? It's like we can have healthy fear. I could get in a car accident every time I get into the car. As a percentage, right? I could, a lot of things could happen that don't keep us from doing some things. We just need to take pragmatic, smart, being safe, right? And I tend to have these bipolar moments of like, I'm a capitalist. Like, you can't keep me at my house. Like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I think is good for me. And then I have this other community progressive thoughts of saying, no, if my parents, who are both in a high risk factor group, if they were to get it and it was my fault or because I was being unsafe, like that would devastate me. Right. So I have these like emotional roller coaster rides of going back and forth. And at the same time, I still think there's a lot of ways that we could just be smart about how we're operating all of our businesses. I mean, the restaurant businesses have really adapted, and the community. McCrae, man, I appreciate what you've done with St. George Eats and connect, because you connected me to them, but they're doing an incredible job trying to keep all of the eateries and some of these businesses rolling, them being non-essential and having to shut down. Retail, to me, I know Mayor Peg touched on that. Retail at a certain level is you can mail stuff still, right? You can still buy things online. Some of our small local retail shops don't have that big of an ability, but food is a big portion of our service industry. But I think we could just keep being smarter about the way that we do things. What are some other ways? Because I love to brainstorm around how can we just adapt to this and say, if this is kind of a new norm, that people are kind of afraid of getting sick and we don't know how long this virus is going to stay around, or I'm afraid of catching something that is ultimately going to hurt a bunch of people. How can we adapt to that? The supplies of gloves and masks and hand sanitizer and cleanliness, I think there's going to be an arc to that of, oh, hey, we're going to get all this back in because supply and demand demands it. What do you guys think about that? Sue, I'd love to hear your thoughts on adapting to it.
Well, are you talking about just adapting to the health concerns, or adapting to just this new norm as our overall economy and all the?
Well, just maybe specifically to our industry, like the health concerns, but also the actions that sellers and buyers are taking right now, right? A seller is
Well, I
afraid to
think
let
we're
people.
doing it. I think this is exactly what we're doing right now on this call. I think that being informed and being knowledgeable, and you bringing all of these different facets of our economy together, and us being the calming force. I kind of touched on that last week. I think that we just have to be the calming force with our clients, with our buyers, with our sellers, with our employees, with the whole industry, because that will show leadership, and then we'll be able to move this forward. I'm confident that we're going to get through this.
Yeah, I think being able for us as agents to be aware of the different industries that are being infected, because that way when I have a client come in and they're in the restaurant industry, I can advise them, right? I have Greengate Barbers, Jeff, he's a barber over at Greengate Barbers. He was looking to buy a home, and I said, Jeff, potentially let's just hold off, man. You got a ton of money saved up. You got a great rent option right now. I would hate to have you go spend all the savings until people are ready to go get their haircut again, right? Because I'm starting to get really ridiculous. I'm gonna have to go back and get a haircut. There's gonna be this arc to people going back and getting to somewhat of a normal routine. But for him, I absolutely say, hey, let's hold off if you need to, but if you feel confident in it, let's keep looking. And then others, I'm like, there's really nothing that would change for you. He works remotely. He's a tech guy. Technically he works in California, but he lives here. We can find you a house. There's no reason why we couldn't find you a house, knowing that your industry as a whole isn't, potentially it could take a small hit, but there's no reason right now to think that this isn't going to really disrupt their ability to make a living.
Yeah, I think some people it will totally disrupt, and I think not being attached to the outcome and really taking our client's best interest to heart. But knowledge is power, and I know that every single deal that I've had closed this last month, them hearing what is going on and what other people are thinking and saying, help them feel more confident about closing.
Yeah, perception.
Hey, Sue, I had a quick question for you. Have you seen any contracts fail because of job loss?
I
you
haven't.
experienced?
I haven't yet. My son's a lender, and he's had a couple. One of his clients worked at a restaurant and was laid off, and of course they couldn't do the final employment verification. It wasn't my client, so I haven't. But I tend to work with a lot of retirees, and if they're not pulling money out of the stock market right now, they're coming. I mean, as long as their house is being able to be sold in another area, they're not even batting an eye. They want to be here. And that's why I feel really confident that we're going to get through this quick.
Yeah, that was a mixed question. I was going to ask Mayor Pike. He made a comment in this article that, let me pull it up real quick, that our population of our community is 20% over 65, right? So that's a big swath of the buying force, right? Is over 65. And if we were to say retirees being a big push of our real estate pushes, I had a client who he was going to pull money out of his 401k. I said, why don't we just get you a loan? You could take a 10-year out or a 15-year out at a 3% interest rate. It's basically free money. You only lose your money in your 401k if you take it out now. Why wouldn't we just try to ride this out for 10 years at a 3% interest? It seems like you could actually still come out on top if you get that loan that doesn't have a high interest rate versus just either bagging the whole thing, or which he would lose, like, I think he's got $50,000 in a construction deposit, which he doesn't want to do. So coming up with some solutions for him, I think, David, this is a bigger portion of our economy than it was last time, is that newer home buyer, first-time home buyer that do have this risk of job loss because they're not necessarily as high up on the totem pole from their businesses. I think that's a percentage, right? And if we say 30% of the workforce, if we're talking about 15% unemployment nationwide, what does that look like in Washington County? And I want to ask Mayor Pike that, because I wrote down a bunch of questions to see if I could remember. How do they track it? How do we track local unemployment? How do we track, where can I go to find some of these things? And based on their industries, I'd be curious, does anybody know? Bankruptcies is the other thing. You know, I'd like to see what companies are filing Chapter 11. And I would assume right now with the PPP program and some of these CARE Act programs, the local funds that the governor, or the mayor was talking about, SUBA, you know, they donated $10,000 to that fund, that 900,000. 45, I didn't want to blow it up, but 45 companies is not that much. Being able to help 45 companies at $20,000 a pop, that's a Band-Aid. You know, I would love to say that that's great. It's positive, but I don't know if that's enough to, you know, $20,000 might not even be a month's worth of expenses for a lot of these companies. You know,
I had another question. Has anyone experienced, I heard that a lot of lenders, and I'm sorry I hopped on late, so if this was already answered, please let me know. I heard a lot of lenders start to transfer their start to make their lending guidelines more difficult. So, you know, FICO scores, everything else, they bump that up. Has anyone seen people, as far as leads, evaporate or deals fall through because of those changes?
I have. We had a client that they were just barely squeezing in under FHA guidelines and will not now. So it's going to take them a couple months to just put a little bit more money together and do a credit rescore and get a couple debt credit cards paid off. They'll be back. It's just going to tighten them up a little bit. One thing I will mention along the lending is, again, my son's a lender and mentioned to me the other day that they are starting to already see deferments on credit reports. And so again, educating your client, not necessarily a good thing to go do, right? Defer your credit cards, defer your auto loans, make your mortgage payment the last thing you defer, because that is reported on your credit report. And down the road, when you go to get a new mortgage or loan, that does come up. Right now, there's not any consequences, but we did see consequences after 2008, and they're starting to see them. They're starting to see deferments already.
Yeah, and I've talked several times to our office about talking to your clients, your database, right? The people that you know, have them reach out to the people servicing their loans, because a lot of them have programs that they don't have to default. They don't have to report. I know Guild Mortgage, they're not reporting for 90 days. So if
There's a great article. Oh, sorry, Robert. Didn't
Oh
mean
yeah,
to-
I'm just saying you got to tell them, like tell our clients, you got to talk to you can't just hide it. We gotta have that conversation. What was the article, David?
Yeah, there's a great article that Forbes put out. You could probably just Google it, but I can share it with you. It might take a minute to pull up. And I shared it with my database of what people's options were if they couldn't pay their mortgage. And it's really important. I mean, some lenders right now are talking about, oh, well, you don't have to pay for 3 months, but on month 4, we want, all 3 months that you owe.
Yeah, the
So
forbearance.
obviously that doesn't do anyone any favors. So it's really important when you are talking to people to give them resources that might make sense for their situation. And that's what I told people is I said, hey, come ask me the question and I probably won't have an answer for you, but at least I can point you to the right resource.
Yeah.
And hopefully you aren't having an issue, but if you are, let me know and we can try and work something out. Because hopefully I've talked to a few people who I thought might be affected and they weren't. So from what I've heard, from the people that I know and talk to, luckily they haven't been affected
Yet, and that's the thing is we're
yet.
still only a month into this, right? We're right on that leading indicator. I called Chris Wright at Wright Automotive, and I'm like, oh, Chris is probably busy, right? People are like, I can't drive anywhere. I might as well take my car in now since I can't go anywhere anyway. I needed to get this repair. He's like, no, man, I'm dead. He's like, nobody's coming in. He's like, I'm just trying to keep my guys busy so I don't have to have them not come in. And this is a guy where he's my buddy and he would squeeze me in if he can. And a lot of times he's like, oh man, I'm like 4 or 5 days out. He's like, I would love to get you in right now, but I'm just slammed. And that's that's normal for Chris. And he's got a smaller operation, but it was surprising to me that because that seemed like an industry to me that wasn't going to be affected. And then he is being affected. So and how long does that last for him, right? Like how long can he do that? If they're talking about not opening everything up until May, and then the fear around it is residual from that May, right? If they say May, then there's residual fear longer than that versus, relieving some of these things and not allowing these big parties in the streets. Like back in 1918, I guess they had like this big party in the streets after they kind of started announcing that the flu had gone away, and then like 12,000 people died in the next like 4 months because they basically all just threw it to the wind. And we're all much more educated at this point about some of these things, but I know that there's going to be this fallout. The new normal for us to readjust is going to take time. So we're talking late May. If Chris Wright is fine now, but still trying to find business, if he can't be fine 60, 90 days from now, then how far do those dominoes start to roll? And that's why I want to have these conversations. Where are we at now? Right. And right now it seems like everybody's like, kind of uncertain. I haven't really seen anything change yet. And we're going to run through some of this data as the same over and over. So it'll be interesting to see, but there's a couple other industries that I want to reach out to see if we can get kind of what they're doing, at least plug them into the conversation so that maybe once a month we can loop them back in and say, hey, where are we at? We talked to you a month ago, where are you at now? And see how we can see this kind of track. But again, I'm going to lean really heavy into the trainings with my agents, and we need to adapt. We need to adapt to this and say, if I was not used to contacting as many people, we need to contact more people, because as a percentage of the people that can buy and sell goes down. I don't know, David, do you have the Shift book from Gary Keller?
Oh yeah, I got all Gary's books. He made me not a millionaire, but I'm working on it. You know?
Could be a millionaire, man. You know how to do it. You just
yeah, but I like skiing and riding my mountain bike more than I like working.
Spending time with that cute baby, man.
Yeah. No, that's a great book, and there's a lot of great resources, and one of the ones that I'm reading right now that's great too is Tony Robbins has a really good book on money that I'm reading. I forget the name of it.
Master the Game?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's great. Even as an author, he's great. But Yeah, Shift is fantastic, and anyone who hasn't read Millionaire Real Estate Agent should go and read it at least 2 or 3 times, because it's a great book. And if anyone can even master that, I think they would certainly be set up for any market. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm excited about the shift. I'm not excited about the bad parts of what's going to happen, but I am excited to see. I'm a very A-type personality, and I like the change. I'm one of those people that are like kind of looks around the rooms like I need to change something. I'm definitely not a status quo individual. And so when I see things like this, I see new ways of doing business, some exciting new ways of connecting to my clients. You know, there's some redundancy in the things that we've done over the last 5 to 6 years, because I really think, you know, 2014 and 15 was this turnaround for Washington County. And I just happened to luckily get into the business right as it started to kind of take off like a rocket. And it seems like we've been doing a lot of the same stuff. We're going to have to change the way we do it. And I like brainstorming around how we can do some business differently. The Zooms, I've heard a lot of people say that they're getting exhausted from the Zooms. I've been using Zoom with my clients from out of town since I got into the business almost. I instead of doing a call, I just do a Zoom, a face-to-face. And, you know, I could share my screen, I can share files, I can do a lot of things. And I think it's a good tool for our agents to use in speaking with their clients. But there's some new ways that we could do business that I'm interested in seeing how we all adapt to it.
yeah, and that's the funny thing about change, right? Is change doesn't care whether you like it or not. Change just happens, and so you have to either adapt and move forward, or just, you know, suffer the consequences. And so yeah, change is great, and you have to. I mean, right now, one of the things that I think that for me personally, I decided to focus on is, one, playing the long game, because it is a long game, and hopefully everyone is set up for a long game. And I think Sue is so right in that, hey, you know, things will bounce back. And obviously right now, I think, you know, 20% of my business is retiring baby boomers from California. So it's kind of hard to convert those sales when, you know, their houses aren't selling. And so expecting that, as far as, okay, well, you know, maybe I'll be 20% down, that will definitely come back. And so going back to what I decided to focus on, is focusing on helping other people out and rallying my database around doing the same thing. And not necessarily for myself, but for my community. And so, you know, I think hopefully, you know, we can all decide to say, okay, well, you know, maybe every one of us will suffer a little bit. And some of us will certainly suffer more than others, but our community needs to rally around helping each other out. That's, in my opinion, that's a great way to play the long game with your database and stay busy if you're not busy right now, but hopefully you are busy.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do you guys think? Well, thanks for being on, everybody. I know it's 10:30. We went a little even longer. Sue, did you want to say anything else?
I was just going to say that I think that's one of the best parts that's coming from all of this, is just the support that we're seeing from each other. We don't do that a ton, and it's awesome to see all the different minds and brokerages and people come together and support each other. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love this. I mentioned this on the last call, but I've read this book a couple of times now. It's called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And he talks about a worthy adversary. And he uses that term kind of loosely, more of the fact that, you know, in our type of economic scenarios, is that we need businesses to compete with us. We need other businesses to challenge us to make us better. And so there's a certain level of collaboration that occurs. And there's a certain level of, hey, we need to push each other to be a little better. Because if I sit back and be like, everybody's kind of taking a break, and then everybody's saying the same thing, then that's when it has the negative effect. Where on the affirmative side, where we can collaborate to a certain level and push each other to be better, and that competition, I love that competition. I don't take it as a negative thing. I take it as a, hey, this is going to drive me. And that's not the same driver for everybody, but I think industry wide, we have a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs. We have people that want to control their world and their businesses, and that competitive nature is kind of an ingrained nature in us. So if we can kind of compete with each other and push each other to do more, it's only going to help the greater community, right? Because that's part of our business, is connecting them.
Yep, absolutely. This is great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robert and McCrae and whoever else organized all this. And thanks to everyone.
You guys are making it work. So I appreciate it. Thanks for being on. Don't be late next time, right, David?
Sounds
Sorry.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks.